Hello, and thanks for checking out the podcast. Before we get into this next episode, just a few things. One, we are going to be having our first live stream, January 30th, Mercer playing Bellarmine. We have Denver playing Utah. This is so exciting to be watching college lacrosse again. I cannot wait. We're going to be live streaming on YouTube and possibly TikTok. Whatever platform you're interested in checking out, please go to that platform, click subscribe and the notifications so you can get updates for any other upcoming live streams. We're going to be watching the game, commenting, probably eating a lot of fried chicken. Maybe I'll have some other coaches and college players over to watch with us. We'll see what we can do. Next, couple shout outs. Gannon and Banks, guys, putting in the work on the Braveheart Challenge. That's awesome. For everyone else, be sure you guys put your headphones in, go hit the wall while you're listening to these episodes. It's a great way to stay active, great way to get better. Taking in lacrosse content, whether it's about coaching or, opportunities in life that lacrosse has brought on for any of the guests, as well as on the field development, getting better. Make sure you guys are switching hands over the top. We don't need any sidearm, no junk like that. So keep after it. Be sure to tweet, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, share so your teammates can get better and get on the train. The next thing, just before we get into this episode, I would just like to take the opportunity to reflect on how much lacrosse has given me. I think it's been so amazing, and I'm so excited to share that with you. After editing this podcast, I realized, we're extremely fortunate. Yes, there's things that need to be improved in the world, but one of the reasons I bring this up is the next guest talks about growing the sport and getting involved with the community to a whole nother level. He is taking that really to heart into some impoverished countries. We think that we have poverty and rough times going on in the U.S., and absolutely, I'm not taking anything away from that. But also, there's other places in the world that don't have it and aren't as fortunate as we are. So with that, obviously, I'm really excited to talk about the great things coming up in this next episode, and here we go. Welcome to the Braveheart Lacrosse Show. I'm your host, Greg Marzak. For those of you that's your first time checking in, I'm a former Division I lacrosse player, currently a youth and high school lacrosse coach located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and excited to share some lacrosse content with you and grow the sport. Let's check out the next episode. Down. Set. So thanks for joining the Braveheart Lacrosse Show. It's really exciting to introduce my next guest. He's from Colombia. He helped found his lacrosse program at his high school. He went on to play at the University of Connecticut, and since then has taken lacrosse further than maybe anyone I'll ever get to talk to. I know I've had friends that played abroad, and I was fortunate enough to get to play abroad, but I'm really excited to hear his side of the story, and I hope you guys, everyone that's listening, are interested as well. It's my honor to introduce Javier Silva, the executive director at Lacrosse the Nations.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is awesome, and a privilege to have you. I definitely, with this podcast, I've talked about growing the sport and opportunities to expand. And it's really interesting to hear people's perspective about what's important, whether it's, making youth field shorter or, lowering the cost of equipment so that more people, that, you remove that barrier of entry, or just different things that people are getting involved with the community. Obviously, everyone that does that makes a great initiatives, but this, from what I've heard about you and seen online, this is really exciting to get to hear someone who's actively doing that. So if you want to talk a little bit about your organization, we can start off with that and introduce people who haven't heard of this before. The floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. So Lacrosse the Nations has been around since 2009. It started off as a conversation between a couple of lacrosse players who were traveling. They were in Nicaragua. They had been doing service work there. They'd been surfing there, and they came across a community that was living inside of a trash dump. And they were kind of just blown away by the fact that there was a whole community of people that were living at the base of a giant pile of garbage, and that's how their lives revolved. Like that's what their lives revolved around. And what they noticed was that the majority of the population was kids, and in that environment, kids didn't really have an opportunity to be kids, and so they kind of racked their brains and said, what can we do to help these kids? And the one thing that these two guys had in common was lacrosse. And so they were like, well, let's introduce lacrosse and see what happens. And maybe the kids will like it, and maybe they'll have fun, and maybe they won't. And we're just a bunch of kind of crazy lacrosse bros. But the kids fell in love with the sport, and that was really the seed that was planted into what we're doing now. And we've kind of just grown organically with the communities that we work, trying to address their needs through the sport. So it started off as just, here's a stick, here's a ball, this is how you play, have some fun, to being really intentional about what we're doing in the communities that we work in, and just being an active listener in those communities, and not telling them what they should be doing, but listening to what they need, and trying to use our resources and our network to provide that. And so it's funny because you said we're growing the game, and we 1000% are. We're introducing the sport into communities that have never seen it, putting sticks in hands that would never have touched a stick before. But it's really just a byproduct of what we're doing. It's kind of a nice side effect. It's a really awesome side effect of what we're doing, is having more lacrosse players and growing interest in the game. But what we're really doing is using our sport as a tool and a vehicle to give young people all over the world the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become really awesome young human beings. And we do that in a lot of different ways. So in Latin America specifically, we run after-school lacrosse programs, and at those practices, yes, we focus on fundamentals, passing, catching, throwing, all that stuff, but the core of those practices revolves around the life skills that our students need to succeed in life. So goal setting, communication, respect, how to succeed through failure, how to persevere through failure,
how to be a part of a team,
how to be a part of a team, all those things that we kind of all learn and kind of inherently when we play a sport. We've taken and built a curriculum around it, and we're trying to teach it intentionally.
Yeah.
So that whether or not a kid comes through our programs, I literally had this conversation yesterday. I don't care if a kid comes through our programs and can never pass and catch. Like if he never passes or she never passes and catches a ball properly, it's not a big deal, as long as they are a better human after they've gone through our program than they were when they started. If they have a better education, if they value their education more, if they're going to school, if they want and have higher aspirations than they originally had before, because we're opening them up to a new world. If that happens and they can't pass and catch, great. If neither of those things happen, then we've done something wrong. And one of the big things in order for us to achieve that mission of creating these kids who love going to school, work hard, and want to do bigger and better things for their community, in order for that to happen, they need to fall in love with the sport. And so one can't happen without the other. But if one does happen and the other doesn't, I hope it's that they're better humans than not that they're better lacrosse players. That was a really long, rambling answer for part of it.
This is Amazing.
Yeah,
If I could just to ask a couple
absolutely interrupt.
questions.
I could ramble forever, so please cut me off, ask questions for sure.
No, there's so many unique points that I'd love to touch on. First, you mentioned South America and Nicaragua and a few locations. What are some of the other communities and areas around the world that your organization is getting involved in?
Sure. So we work in primarily three countries in Latin America. Excuse me, Panama, Colombia, and Nicaragua. Nicaragua is our oldest site. We've been there since the beginning in 2009. We opened a site in Panama in 2018, and we recently opened the Colombia site. We actually, the first month of practice was February of 2020.
Mhm.
So we got about 6 weeks worth of lacrosse in Colombia before we were forced to shut down from COVID. We also run an after school program in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club here in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh, awesome.
Um, and Charlottesville is a city that's really close to our heart. One of our founders is a UVA men's lacrosse alumni. And we have tons of board members from Charlottesville, volunteers from the University of Virginia, both on the men's and the women's side. We have really close ties to that program. So we wanted to have a domestic footprint that reflected that heritage that we have at UVA. We had programs in Costa Rica, and we stopped those a couple years ago for various reasons. But right now, our focus is on Nicaragua, Panama, and Colombia. All three different sites. In Panama, it's a Caribbean island. In Colombia, we are in the outskirts of the capital in the mountains. And in Nicaragua, we're in the capital in some very underserved communities, one of them being the former trash dump that I mentioned earlier. And then the other is just outside the city limits.
This is really, one of the maybe more interesting and unique perspectives about growing, not only, as you mentioned, the sport, but making an impact in communities that I think I'll ever hear about or hopefully get the chance to bring to the audience. Just a perspective. I've been very fortunate to talk to college players and former professional players. And now I had Greg from East Coast Dyes come on and talk. That was so cool to hear. But I think just to put in perspective, not only to myself, but the fans, we're talking about a sport where it's either, some argue, the most expensive or second most expensive sport to get involved in. Averages around $7,000 per year. So if you think about how fortunate we are in the US to even, debate that topic, and now you're bringing up an aspect that I don't think, for people outside of the US, don't, live every day below $1 a day, that type of lifestyle, and that, not to be too, blowing out of perspective how fortunate we are in the US, but that is unfathomable to some of the people who are really involved with lacrosse and really passionate about it.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be hopefully a whole new level of perspective. That's unbelievable to hear about, because in these nations, like you're saying, where poverty as a word to describe it is not even skimming the surface. It's like you're saying, people living in trash dumps. So that's so inspirational to hear, and not just in terms of a feel good story, like you having a passion and having an entire team committed to improving situations like that around the world and expand lacrosse as a second piece, really impacting communities based on life skills, simple life skills that are just not, taught, whether it's because of a lack of infrastructure or lack of educational programs. That is so cool to hear about. Really, like I'm honored to have someone like you on the podcast. Yeah, it's cool to talk to either professional or collegiate players or, idols in sports, but really to hear someone else doing big things in the world, that's awesome. And if anyone's listening, of course, I will have a link in the description. I always mention this, to any way you can help out or just want to learn more. Please do reach out to Javier and the team. That this is, for me, this is so cool, such a unique perspective. If you don't mind, I have some other questions I'd like to bring up, or you can, obviously, if you have something else you'd like to present.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned was perspective from the U.S. lacrosse community, and that's the kind of the other piece of what our mission is all about. We talk about education and opportunity, and when we talk about it in the context of Latin America, it's the things that you mentioned. Access to quality education. People living at or below the poverty line. So when we put our mission to work in that community, in that context, it's very easy to see, right? We run after school lacrosse programs and we teach kids how to be better kids. And we teach them how important education is and all that fun stuff. Um, but we kind of also flip it on its head and focus a lot on high school and college lacrosse players,
Mhm.
um, who are so fortunate in so many ways, who have amazing fields that they play on, go to incredible schools, have access to all these things. But, and I don't know how you feel about this, but one of the biggest things in the lacrosse community is that we're in a bubble. A lot of lacrosse players don't leave their prep school, don't leave their community. They don't know what the world around them is really like. And I'm a firm believer that the only way that you can grow as an individual is to travel outside of your bubble, right? Whether that hood and you go to the neighborhood next door, or that bubble is your state and you go to the state next to yours, or if your bubble is your country and you leave the country, or if, whatever your scope is, the more you can get out of that, the more well-rounded you'll be, the more empathy you'll have, the more understanding you can be of others. And so we try to offer opportunities for young lacrosse players and even older lacrosse players, post collegiate coaches, anyone in the lacrosse community we want to bring into our mission so that they have the opportunity to get out of their bubble and to learn about the world and explore something new while using the lacrosse field as the tool, right? So when you kind of leave your comfort zone, it's really hard to do that unless you have something that you can attach yourself to. And so one of the things that we do is we offer high school and college and post anyone in the lacrosse community the opportunity to travel and visit our programs and see firsthand how we use the sport in a way that they've never seen before. And it's just a really good opportunity to learn about philanthropy, to learn about a new culture, um, and to do it with a stick in your hand so that you have some like sense of home at the same time. And um, COVID obviously makes that very difficult, and we haven't done that any of that since COVID started. But our goal is to ramp that up again this year, get as many college and high school and pro lacrosse players to visit our sites, help us grow the game, but at the same time come back a better person yourself. So I wanted to make sure I talked about that because there's two sides to the mission that we
Yeah.
run, and it's domestically how we work with young people here, and internationally how we work with young people in the communities where we work.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm hoping this impacts more people than just me. This is really inspiring to learn about, and also, um, just positivity around not just thinking outside of COVID, but thinking at a larger scale. It's great to play lacrosse and great to do everything domestically, but when you think at a bigger scale, this is just great to have you on. A couple of things. The topics around traveling outside of the US. I mentioned this before on the podcast, so if anyone's sick of hearing it, so I apologize. I did have the opportunity. I played abroad, living in Germany, and I've traveled. I was really fortunate growing up, traveling over 36 countries, just around the world. My father worked for Delta Airlines. I lived abroad, so we got to see some really unique perspectives from Asia all the way to far Eastern Europe and Australia, just all over the United States. The point you brought up about perspective, whether it's a volunteer abroad or study abroad programs. I know that's tough in college if kids are playing because the athletes
Yeah,
time
it's tough.
management piece. But if you have opportunities in the summer, like you're sharing, or anything, I cannot recommend enough. Try to take advantage of those opportunities, especially if it's with an organization like yourself. That's super cool to hear about. I also know I've said this before. I've hopefully can get him on. One of my good buddies, JP Forrester, took a year or a few, a decent amount of time, and went to Australia and play as like a play abroad program. And those are obviously, you would hope you make an impact on the world with something like you guys are working on, but it's a really unique opportunity and something I think people should take advantage of if they're ever considering it. I do have a question. I usually ask people about their favorite venue that lacrosse is going on, but I think with your perspective, what is the farthest place you've played lacrosse, like from the United States, or the farthest place you played from home? And what are some things like that? I remember, just to give a slight story, I was fortunate enough to play. I played in Switzerland, in the Swiss Alps, on the mountains. I've played in the Black Forest, which was crazy, in Germany. And those are like things that, I mean, I played at the college, like Division I level. I've played in some really unique stadiums, but when you go abroad and you're, sort of in this whole nother world, that was really, meaningful and impactful in my life, and something it's hard to describe because it's so unique and it's so unique. But obviously going to Latin America and having the chance to play, there's a picture behind you. I'm a little curious about that, but I'll stop. I'll let you answer.
Man, that question is tough. That is a hard question. So when I did my master's program, I did it in Sweden, and I had the privilege of playing on a club team in Sweden. When I got there, these two guys were just having a catch on campus, and I was like, I need to talk to you guys. I need to know how you got these sticks here.
It's crazy. And that's the same thing. That's how I found about in Germany. It was just a guy wearing a lacrosse T-shirt, and I said, "What is this?"
And that's the thing about the lacrosse community, right? It's like you see someone with a stick, or you see someone with a penny, you can walk up to them, and you're going to be best friends like that, right? And so I saw these two guys having a catch, and they were like, "Yeah, we need players. We need a coach. Like, can you come and you do it?" And a week later, I had my parents ship all my lacrosse gear from Connecticut to Sweden, and I was playing in their national tournament. And, like, absurd. So I have a ton of different like experiences like that, and I don't know if I have one venue. I think probably the coolest place, and I played in like a pickup game there, but I was actually coaching, and it was the 2018 World Championships in Israel. I got to coach Team Colombia.
Wow. That's awesome.
Throughout the tournament, and just like it was my only opportunity ever to go to Israel. Like, when was I ever going to do that?
Yeah.
And so I was able to play and coach there, coach as on the national team, and then play in they had like a mini pickup tournament kind of thing at the fair, that I got to play in. But just like being in Israel, like never in my wildest dreams that I think I'd ever end up being in Israel because of lacrosse, like maybe touristing or whatever, but because of specifically lacrosse. I think Oslo was an amazing city. It was a really cool opportunity. Beautiful. I got to go and play and referee there. Just because it's like the polar opposite of Latin America. It's cold. There's no sun. Everything's
Did you see the
expensive.
Northern Lights?
I wasn't in Oslo for the Northern Lights when I played lacrosse, but yeah.
It's amazing.
I don't know. I mean, I played lacrosse on the beach on a Caribbean island in Panama. Wow. I don't think there's one place that I could say is like my favorite place.
I'm sure that anybody, of course, myself, so I don't care what anybody else, but listening to this is so unique, and very few people have experiences like this. Like you said, the lacrosse community is so small, but also so tight in a bubble that when you hear about players playing either in even Hawaii or, just a unique location outside of the hotbeds, it's like, whoa, what?
Yeah, it's really cool.
It is really cool. And I thought me playing abroad was like, oh, I feel good about myself. You have an unbelievable story.
Yeah, my stick's gone all over the place.
That's crazy. And you brought up getting your gear shipped. I just want to add this. When I went abroad, I was like, I'll play, doesn't matter. And I just picked up gear out of the lost and found and was just playing with like lost and found gear because I didn't
Yeah.
care. I was just so excited to get on the field.
I wish if they had had extra gear, I would have used it.
Yeah.
Like, we have no extra gear. If you can bring anything, like, bring it. I was like, I got you.
I'll get it shipped. That's
Uh,
awesome. This
yeah, it was
is,
a little pricey, but it was 100% worth it. I ended up playing like 4 different countries. I have friends that I played lacrosse with that I'm still talking to this day,
yeah,
that live
of course.
in Scandinavia. It's
Of
just
course.
amazing.
I was fortunate. I still have, just like you're saying, getting yelled at in German during like games was really like, I don't want to say tormenting or anything like that, but it was
Intimidating.
yeah, it was certainly a new perspective about getting yelled at in a sport, right? And it's
Yeah.
in German, and that
You
was,
don't understand a word that's going
I
on.
mean, I was
Yeah, the
trying to
same
figure
thing in
out,
Swedish. I mean, Swedish is uh it's not as a harsh a language, I think some people will
yeah.
say German is. I don't think German's that harsh, but it's definitely weird when someone's yelling at you and you have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah,
It's
and they're
it's
just
it's a
asking to
trip.
pass or
Yeah,
trying to set up the play.
yeah. But it's a great way to learn the language. You learn like
Oh
little
yeah,
things, and it's great.
absolutely, absolutely. Wow, this has been amazing so far. Usually I ask, so do you have any ideas? And again, I brought this up in the beginning. In the bubble, lacrosse bubble, I'm really not just producing content to try to grow the sport and get players interested. Like, I don't want it to be a lip service like that. Obviously, asking one of the largest manufacturers of equipment about, hey, the price point of the lacrosse goods is really high. How can we grow the sport with that? What are your thoughts on it? I was very fortunate that he wasn't, turned off by it, and he had a great answer and brought up ways that he gets involved with donating and the U.S. lacrosse organization. And then we talked about the size of youth sports fields to try to get more kids on the field and not make it so big. But from your perspective, not just in terms of community involvement globally, what are some areas you think that could be utilized more to grow the sport?
It's all about access,
Yeah.
getting lacrosse programs started in places that they're not. I mean, even I'm talking even specifically in the US,
Yeah.
because there's so many places in this country that don't have lacrosse. So what does access mean? It means lowering the cost of entry. It means making gear more affordable. It means making it as simple and as basic as possible so you can get more people involved. So, one of the things that we do is we play small numbers, because we don't have field space where we work. We don't have access to giant soccer-sized fields for the most part for our programs. So we play on basketball courts, volleyball courts, on the beach, like wherever we can. So, you know, we have to we've had to adjust the rules of the game to that. And so we play a version of lacrosse that's more similar to the sixes that World Lacrosse just rolled out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I feel like they stole that idea from us. I'm just kidding. But that's essentially how we've been playing since the beginning. Sticks, balls, helmets, keeping it basic for as long as possible and get the kids hooked. And then figure out a way to make your gear more accessible. I think that's the key. We are very fortunate that we have great relationships with a lot of the manufacturers, and they donate gear.
Of course.
They sell gear at a reduced price. Um, you know, we're also very fortunate in the fact that we don't have to, not everything has to be to spec for rules. So like sticks can be pinched, sticks can be too wide, too long.
Yeah.
Like those little details for us don't matter because we're not playing competitive games or World Lacrosse international tournaments or anything like that. So we don't have to worry about like every little speck on every piece of gear being right. The biggest thing we need is that it's safe.
Yeah.
A helmet can't have like missing stuff. It needs to be complete and not cracked, and
Not
we
a
need to
reject.
ensure that it's not gonna hurt someone.
Yeah.
And so we, because of that, have been able to just accept donations of used gear.
That's awesome.
From all over the country. People have, I don't know, I think everyone and their mom has garage gear, like just stuffed of
My
lacrosse
parents are
games.
still telling me you have gear you need out of the basement, like get it
Exactly.
out.
Exactly. So we can rely on that, and I think upstart programs in the U.S. can also rely on that, um, especially when it comes to beginner level lacrosse. Right.
Yeah,
The only thing you really need to learn to play lacrosse is a stick
yeah,
and a ball. Like you can make up a goal, you can use a dumpster, you can use cones. All you really need are sticks and balls.
mhm,
And if you have that, you can get kids to fall in love with the game. And I think if you need to do that longer than, sixth grade, seventh grade, so you can build your resources and get your community into it, then
yeah,
that's what you do. And that's what we do. Um, but that's the first piece. And then the second piece I would say is getting community buy-in. So in these places where lacrosse isn't common, you have to spend a lot of time introducing parents, teachers, administrators what the sport is all about because they don't know it. So, like in places like Tennessee or Kentucky that are not hotbeds of lacrosse, there's a growing movement of this sport because there are coaches and players that are taking the time to like explain what
yeah,
lacrosse is and getting people excited about it. And that just takes time,
yeah,
right? So parents aren't going to buy into it year one. This
yeah.
is a year 5, year 6, year 7 kind of thing. And so just having people that are really committed to a long-term process is key, and figuring out how to keep them is important.
Yeah, that's one really unique perspective you brought up about access to the game and what does that mean, not just in terms of equipment, field space, but knowledge about the sport, right? Not having some dad go out there as best as intentions are, but who's just like, hit them, go, like, and that
Yeah.
changes, just as you said, over time, as more and more people play the sport, more and more people want to give back to the community, to give back to something that, was fortunate to get them where they are, in life. Like, yeah, I probably would have been able to go to school without lacrosse and have, the scholarships, but there's no way I would be where I am now in terms of career stability and all the fortunate things I am to have in my current situation. I would not be here without lacrosse, not the guidance that coaches or, positive influences that had in my life.
Yeah.
And as you brought up amazing points, having access to that information, whether it's inner city schools, some of the poorest countries in the world, all of that, being able to be taught through a sport that is growing, one of the fastest growing sports in the world. Super exciting to be a part of, and great to hear people like yourselves doing amazing work. Like this is, I get excited, obviously, to see, podcasts doing well and more players listening, but to hear people like yourself who's going out unbelievable parts of the world and growing the sport. That's amazing. So encouraging and inspiring. And I hope everyone else listening thinks that, because really this is, as much as I want to say I'm growing the sport, you truly are. And it's an honor to hear about that. I don't want to take too much of your
Thank
time.
you.
If you want to end with anything, give a plug, whatever you want to say during this time, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Just one thing on what you said. You said you're not really growing the sport, and this is something that I harp on all of our staff and all of our volunteers. It's we're all doing a little bit, right? And it's the collective that makes the change happen. And so, you know, you doing your podcast, us doing what we do in Nicaragua and Panama and Colombia, that's our part. And then ECD doing what they do, and the PLL doing what they do, and US Lacrosse doing what they do, and everyone's kind of, we're all adding to the pile.
Yeah.
And it's not something you notice right away, but over time, it's always a long-term strategy, right? But over
Yeah.
time, it's going to grow. We all have to put in our piece of it, whether it's helping out at your local Boys and Girls Club or volunteering with us abroad. If everyone's doing their piece and we're all kind of chipping in and we're all working together because we want the game to grow, that's how it's going to happen. And so don't sell yourself short. You're definitely doing your part. And a lot of times we don't see that and we don't hear that. And I think it's important And I try to echo that to our staff and to our volunteers, that we don't always see the change that we're causing in kids or in players or coaches or families from one day to the next, especially when we're in it. But if you take a step back, you need to take a step back and really see that, wow, we have done a lot and we are doing a lot, and it's just a process.
Yeah.
If I could leave your listeners with anything, it's going back to the travel conversation we had. If whatever you do in life, it's get out of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, meet new people, go to new countries, go to new places, experience new things, and watch yourself grow. Like that, travel for me has been like the biggest thing in my life, and a huge reason that I am who I am is because I've lived in so many different places.
Oh, yeah.
And if anyone can get anything out of this podcast, to like get up and get out
Yeah.
as soon as you can, right? As soon as it's safe to do so. Get up, get out there, see the world. I mean, even now during COVID, you can get in your car, take a road trip, go to somewhere you've never been, and see what it's like and experience something new. Hopefully that's with us, and then I'll share the link with you for our service trips, so you can share it with everyone.
Of course.
But just get out there. Like,
Yeah.
travel is the best thing for you.
There's a whole world out
The
there.
soul.
Yeah. Thank you again. This is, like I said, one of the more exciting guests I've ever had, and I'll brag about this. This is really meant a lot to me. Thank you for coming on. Of course, everyone, lacrossethenations.org. I'll have the link in the description. Anything else that Javier sends or that I think is cool, of course, always trying to produce the best lacrosse content out there. Thank you again, and have a great night.
Yeah, thank you too, man.
Awesome. Listen, I've thought long and hard about who I'm going to allow advertise on this podcast. And this ain't no middle of the mall junk. Just like I bring my audience the best lacrosse content, I'm going to bring my audience the best product. There's a link in the bio below or on the support page of the Braveheart Lacrosse Show website, where you can find the best air fryer on the market. Now, I know air fryers, big deal. Everybody wants to make French fries and chicken wings and chicken nuggets, but the Instapot Vortex air fryer oven is the best air fryer on the market. It has a 10-quart internal volume, so you can make French fries for the whole party. It has a built-in rotisserie spick, so you can make a whole chicken. Or you can put those French fries in there, let them spin, and they become perfectly golden without having to flip it. It's great. I cooked for a hotel room of 20 lacrosse coaches, chicken all day. We watched college football and ate chicken all day. So if you like this podcast and you want to support it and you want the best air fryer, check out the link in below and check out the link on the support page of the Braveheart Lacrosse Show website. Thank you, and we'll get back to the content. Hello, and thanks for sticking around to the end of the episode. If you like this content and want more, please subscribe using some of the buttons around here. I don't know which platform you're listening on, but I appreciate it. Also, consider checking out our website, braveheartlacrosseshow.com. You can comment, you can send me a message and suggest what type of content you'd like to hear. Really appreciate it from hearing from the audience, and look forward to bringing you great lacrosse content. Have a great day. Tell your parents you love them.